Tom is getting himself set, his American Legion baseball team out of town this weekend. I think he's all the way down to Racine, so he gets an early start. So he is gone today, but back on Monday. In the meantime, today, coming up after 8:30 this morning, I'll be visiting with the couple. Congressman Sean Duffy and his wife Rachel will be in after 8:30 this morning. In the meantime, we will begin this first segment with United States Senate candidate Eric Hovde, who joins us via the phone. Good morning, Eric.
Morning, Pat. How you doing today?
I am doing great, and you sound pretty darn good. I know that you've been working hard, and we're closing in a couple months, under 2 months before the primary. How's it looking before we kind of look at some of the different topics? How's your campaign?
Things are going well. It's interesting. 2 months, you think that's a short amount of time, but in a political world, it's a lifetime. So lots going to happen over the next couple months, but I feel really good about it and having a great reception wherever I go. I've been doing a number of speeches this past week amongst a variety of different groups and have just had a hugely favorable reaction. So really pleased with how things are going.
I know this is your first time running for an office, so when you're doing it, rookie mistakes maybe be made, and I see that you said something that the Huffington Post tried to big nationwide.
Yeah, but you know what, Pat? It shows how broken our political system has become and how disingenuous it is. You know, I tried to make a comment. I gave a 14-and-a-half-minute speech about my economic plan, talking about getting rid of cronyism at the big corporate level, how broken our tax system because giant corporations buy it off. Did the whole thing, but I mentioned one little bit about entitlements and the massive amount of fraud we have in our food stamp program and all the rest, and I make a comment to a reporter, please stop writing about the sob stories and write about the fact that our economy may collapse because of all this debt that President Obama's put on, which will devastate our whole country and everybody, particularly the poor and the middle class. And so Arianna Huffington comes in and says, oh, this is a wealthy guy that doesn't care about the poor. Well, it's the most disingenuous attack because anybody that knows about my background, I've had a foundation for 14 years. I've built homeless shelters around the world for street children. I have funded, I can't even tell you the amount of projects within this country. Every year I send employees from my different companies all over the globe to do charitable or mission work. I personally, not just write checks, but every year I spend an inordinate amount of time doing things for people that, are struggling. I've worked in food pantries, hand out sandwiches to the poor on Christmas Eve. It's insanity, but, it just shows how disingenuous our whole political system has become. So I've challenged Arianna Huffington to, meet in front of any group of reporters anywhere, anytime, and have them, compare what I've done for the poor and the people that are economically struggling versus her. But you know what? I highly doubt she's going to take up that challenge.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. Well, a couple of years ago when Ron Johnson was running for the U.S. Senate, he was motivated to get into the race and try to stop when he saw Obamacare. What was your motivation? What got you in? Because I know you are focusing a lot on debt and and finances here in the U.S. Was that the straw that kind of got you involved?
Absolutely. During the housing bubble, and I saw that building, and I'd go up and try to talk to congressmen and senators about it, meet with them, with groups of people, and I just was stunned at the lack of economic knowledge as well as the willpower to do the right thing. And then I saw this president just speed us, towards a financial cliff, which we're still heading towards, with $1.6 trillion deficit, $1.3 trillion this year, something along those lines. And at the same time, Pat, what's so frustrating about it, Europe is absolutely collapsing right now because of this issue. I mean, Spain's unemployment rate is 25%. Those youth unemployment, 25-year-olds and younger, is 54%. Greece is economically collapsed, similar type numbers. Italy's following behind it. And yet we have more debt to our economy than all but 4 European countries. We have more debt to our economy than Spain. So I finally just got so fed up, and as I often say, yelling at the television set every morning, I said I just couldn't take it anymore. So that's what propelled me to jump in the race.
You know, back I saw a report this week that said we are now, as individuals, people here in the U.S., poorer than we were in 2005. That's our personal wealth has dropped with homes and everything else. Can we recover that? I know you have a plan that you unveiled here just a week or so ago.
Yes, we can. There's no question we can, but it's going to have to take sound economic policy, something that we've been lacking for a long time. And I did put together an 8-point plan that I think would really spur our economy. 1 point, obviously, was, correct our deficit, and I go into detail how to do that. Secondly, I talk about our tax system, how we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, and why businesses are relocating plants out of America to places like Canada or China that have vastly lower corporate tax rates, as well as the need to get rid of all this corporate welfare where giant corporations can buy off politicians and have almost no taxes, so they shift all the tax burden to small and medium-sized businesses, so it makes it anti-competitive for small businesses, which are really our job engine. I've talked about my point 3, deregulation. People forget that the first thing President Reagan did when he took office was push forward on a big deregulatory process, and that really freed up the American economy. And today, we have 81,000 pages of regulations, and it's estimated to cost the American economy $1.5 trillion. So, I mean, these are just the first 3 points on my economic plan. I have 8 points, which I'm happy to go through any one of them with you. But, I mean, we just have to get on to sound economic policy. But we have to fix our deficit, Pat, because think of it this way. And I ask any of your listeners to think about this. If you're going to make a big investment in a home, or if you're a business person in a factory or building a new building, and you know you're going to be holding on to that asset for 10, 15 years, or even 5 years, are you going to make that big investment if you think our federal government's going to collapse like Spain or Greece? No. That's why so much money's sitting on the sidelines. People are scared, and we've got to give them confidence, and we have to bring economic sanity back to this country.
Again, talking with U.S. Senate candidate Eric Hovde. You can go to ericforsenate.com is his website with all those points we talked about. The primaries coming up in August. 4 outstanding candidates, and you go by the Marquette Law School poll, and it has former Governor Tommy Thompson way out in front. What do you think when you see something like that? But you're out among the people. Tell us what your thoughts are.
Well, I don't get too caught up in polls. One, it was a very small poll, sample 350 people, auto dial, and it was more driven to a general election. Our poll numbers are showing something different, but just go back to the Republican presidential election. You would have thought Michelle Bachmann was going to win it, won, for a month, and Newt Gingrich and Rick Perry, and you could just keep going, and every 2-3 weeks it would change. So I really don't make that much about it. The fact is that Tommy should be in the lead because he is the biggest name ID. I think people are now going to focus on it, and the big thing is that there's a huge chunk of undecided voters. So I feel pretty good about it. And as I said, in politics, 2 months is a long time, particularly now that everybody had been focused on the recall, and now everybody's starting to move their focus over to this U.S. Senate seat, which is going to be critically important. Mm-hmm. And, I'm trying to get the message out that, I'm a person from the private sector. I've never spent my life in politics. I think we need to get back what our founding fathers talked extensively about, and that is citizen legislators, people that go and serve for a term or two and go back out, where they put the country first, not their political career. I have no desire to make my life in politics. I've had a wonderful private sector life. I just want to go there, try to fix a mess, do the right thing, and put our country first and not always try to figure out what's best, for my reelection. So, That's a message that I think is resonating, as well as the fact that I've had, extensive involvement in the private sector, owning a number of different businesses, and have operated in the global financial markets, which so many of our problems have emanated from: the internet bubble, the housing bubble, and now the great government spending bubble. So, I like the reaction and feel very positive about where things are going.
Now, the Senate right now is in control of the Democrats. From your research, winning Wisconsin, if you are a senator, would that help flip? Do you have a good feeling that the Senate would flip to the Republican side?
Yeah, there's really 6 races that are open, and Wisconsin's one of those 6 races. The Republicans have to get 4. But it's not just Republicans, because let's face it, Republicans, made a mess out of things with that Tom DeLay and Denny Hassert Congress and all the earmarks and all the cronyism that was involved. We need true fiscal conservatives, people that are truly going to do the right thing and hold the line on the budget and make the tough choices. And I believe we can win. In fact, I'm so confident we're going to win this Wisconsin Senate seat. Tammy Baldwin's a very weak candidate, but you can't write her off. But I think the country, and this state in particular, with what's happened with Scott Walker, I think the movement's afoot, and to bring back fiscal sanity.
Of course, the Supreme Court, it sounds like next week, will have their decision on the health care, the Obamacare. If it is repealed and unconstitutional, what do you see as alternatives to get these health costs down and to get people on insurance that might not be able to afford it now?
Great question. Very good question. Let me start that by saying this. If you look at the 2 sectors in our economy that have had the highest rate of inflation over the last 30 years, it's been healthcare and higher education. What is the similarity between the 2 of them? Ever-increasing government involvement. They have more government money spent in those 2 sectors than any place else, and that can tell you why inflation's gone up. In fact, 60 cents out of every dollar spent in our healthcare sector is now from the government, federal or state. I think what Paul Ryan has laid out with his premium support plan, the solution, letting consumers be control over their own decisions, and for those that are economically struggling, there is assistance in allowing them to buy either their health care directly or health care insurance directly. But we have to put consumers back in control. We know decisions are made vastly better at the community or at the individual level than concentrating everything up to Washington, D.C. I've never seen Washington manage anything well. I don't know why we think it would manage the second largest sector in our economy well. And the other thing that I think is real critical, Pat, and I share this with people, and they're just blown away by it, but President Obama and Nancy Pelosi said Obamacare is going to save us money over the next 10 years. But what they didn't tell you is they factored in 10 years' worth of tax revenue, but only 6.5 years of expenses. Think of that. If anybody that was running a public company did that with their books, you would be thrown in jail. I mean, it's so fundamentally wrong. So we have to repeal Obamacare.
And I know a lot of our citizens who are retired or senior citizens also worry about Medicare. Paul Ryan had an idea on that as well. The 55 and older, everything stays the same, but we have to reform it. Can we reform it and keep the folks who are older now that rely on it, knowing that they're still going to be there for them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You look, if somebody's built their whole life decisions on, okay, this is how Medicare is structured or this is how Social Security is structured, then you have to keep it in place. It's just like what I've talked about with Social Security. If you're 50 and older, we're going to leave Social Security intact. If you are 50 and younger, we're going to have to add a couple years to retirement. If you're 40 and younger, you got even more time. We're going to have to add a couple more years. And if you're 30 and younger, I don't know, maybe you'd add another, because life expectancy is continuing to go up. People forget that when Social Security was put in place in 1935, retirement age was 65 and life expectancy was 62. So people were dying 3 years before, on average, before Social Security got kicked in place. Today, retirement is still 65, and life expectancy is 79, and it's increasing very rapidly. So, for those that, are planned for this and are older, we've got to keep it intact. But we have to make the tough decisions to preserve it for those that absolutely need it. And one of the other things, like I said, with Social Security, I believe we are going to have to do some levels of means testing. That is, people like me that have been very fortunate in life, in the world of business, I'll forego my Social Security to make sure other people will be able to keep theirs. So, we've got to make these choices. But, a lot of people rely, elderly, on Medicare. And if we don't get serious about fixing our deficit and fixing these problems, like what's happened in Greece, their whole social safety net has been destroyed. I mean, they lost 50% of all their pension account values at the stroke of a pen when they signed the last debt restructuring. So it's devastating to these economies, and that's why we have to make the sound and tough choices.
Wow. Again, ericforsenate.com is his website. Are you going to be, you probably don't know all your schedule, are you going to be up in this part of the state here in the near future?
Oh, absolutely. Pat, I'm getting around. I'm working harder than probably all the candidates combined because, I'm a newcomer and I come from the private sector and I'm not a career politician, so I have to get out and about. So, I'm actually even renting an RV right after 4th of July, and we're doing a tour all through the western and then the upper part of the state and then sweeping down in the middle and up to the east. So, I'm trying to hit everywhere.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you when you come up, and it's been great talking with you today.
Thanks so much, Pat. Have a wonderful day, and I hope all your listeners have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Thanks a lot, Eric. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
That is U.S. Senate candidate Eric Hovde. ericforsenate.com is his website. And coming up here in just a couple of moments, we will be talking with the Duffys. Congressman Sean Duffy, his wife Rachel, will join us after the news at 8:30 on Feedback.